everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling something pretty mind-bending.
Oh, yeah.
Time,
Time. Yeah.
but not like,
Not time management.
no, not time management tips. We're talking about what time actually is.
The nature of time.
Yeah. And to help us unpack this, we're going to be looking at physicist Carlo Rovelli's book, The Order of Time. Have you ever read it?
I have. It's fascinating.
It's so good.
Really makes you think.
It really does. And one of the things that I found most interesting was how Rovelli explores this idea that our everyday experience of time, that constant forward flow,
Right.
it might be more of an illusion than like a fundamental truth.
It really challenges our assumptions about how the universe works.
Totally. And I
Yeah.
mean, we experience time so viscerally. It feels like this river that's just carrying us along. To think that might be an illusion is kind of wild.
It is a pretty radical concept. To grasp it, we maybe need to start with a basic question.
Okay.
If a clock is just measuring the motion of its hands, is time itself even real?
Right. It's like, what are we actually measuring? Is it just the movement of those hands, or is there something deeper going on?
Exactly. Rovelli even talks about how Einstein predicted that time actually slows down at higher altitudes because of gravity. And this was before we had clocks precise enough to measure that.
It's amazing how scientific thinking can lead to these like counterintuitive insights.
Totally. It's like realizing the sun isn't setting, but the earth is rotating away from it. It completely shifts your perspective.
Yeah, and then it gets even crazier when you bring in the fact that speed also affects time.
Right. So someone moving super fast is actually aging slower than someone standing still?
Whoa, hold on. So like, are you saying there's no universal now?
Exactly. There is no universal now. What's happening now on a distant planet is a question with no real answer. It's meaningless. It's like asking what's here in Beijing when you're standing in Venice.
So basically my concept of now is totally relative to where I am and how fast I'm moving.
Yeah, and this lack of a universal present, this is a big deal in physics.
Huh. So, okay, let's dig into this a bit more. So Ravelli talks about how we need to shift our thinking from focusing on things to focusing on events.
Right. To understand time.
Yeah. He uses examples like Plato and Kepler, who tried to make sense of the world through the shape of things instead of their movements.
Which is really interesting when you think about how scientific thought has progressed. From Newton to quantum mechanics, it's all about understanding how events unfold, not just describing static objects.
So instead of asking, what is this thing, we should be asking, what is this thing doing?
Exactly. And that leads to a pretty profound realization. If time just means happening, then everything is time.
Whoa. Okay, I'm starting to see how our language, maybe our everyday concepts about time might be holding us back.
It's true.
Because how do you even begin to describe a world without a universal present? Like, our grammar isn't really designed for that.
You're right. We tend to think about the universe as this neat linear progression from past to present to future. But what if reality is more complex, more like a web of events all influencing each other?
Okay, so that brings us to the concept of eternalism. This idea that past, present, and future all exist equally in this block universe.
Right, like a frozen block.
And change is just an illusion.
It's a compelling idea, but maybe a bit of an oversimplification. The structure of time might be far more intricate than a single fixed timeline.
Okay, so it's not like we're all just lined up, single file, marching through time in perfect order.
Definitely not. More like a chaotic dance.
So then how do we reconcile this idea of a world without a fixed present with our experience of, cause and effect, things happening in a particular order, like a glass shattering after it's dropped?
That's where things get even more interesting. Our understanding of cause and effect is mainly based on what we observe at a macro level, but at the microscopic level, things get much weirder.
Like the quantum level.
Exactly. The laws of physics don't really make the same distinctions between cause and effect at that scale.
So there's this tension between how we experience time and what physics is telling us.
There is. And I think exploring that tension is key to understanding time. It's in those seemingly paradoxical places that we find the most profound insights.
Okay, so let's talk about loop quantum gravity, which I know is what you specialize in.
Yeah.
And this theory is fascinating because it has no time variable in its equations.
That's right. Loop quantum gravity proposes that the universe is made up of these incredibly tiny interconnected loops called spin networks, existing at the Planck scale.
Wait, so you're saying the universe is built out of tiny interconnected pieces of space?
It's a bit more complicated than that, but essentially, yes.
And this explains time.
Loop quantum gravity tries to bring together general relativity and quantum mechanics, which are notoriously difficult to reconcile.
Ice.
And one of the ways it does this is by suggesting that time emerges from this fundamentally timeless reality described by the theory.
Okay, so how does that even work?
Well, to understand that we need to bring in another concept, entropy.
Okay, I've heard of entropy, but I'm not sure I fully get it. Isn't it like things just naturally becoming more messy over time?
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Think about shuffling cards, burning wood, even the formation of stars. These all involve an increase in entropy. The universe is always moving toward a state of greater disorder.
So entropy is like this cosmic measure of messiness, and it's
Yeah,
always increasing.
exactly. And here's the key. It's this gradual increase in entropy that drives the unfolding story of the cosmos.
So in a way, time is emerging from this constant increase in entropy.
You could say that it's the process of things becoming more disordered that gives us this sense of time's arrow.
That's incredible how all these concepts like entropy, heat memory, even craters on the moon, they all tie back to this question of what time is.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is.
Yeah. But to understand our human experience of time, we need to go deeper into how we interact with the world. Through memory anticipation, even our biology.
Our specific perspective.
Yeah, this is getting pretty mind-bending, but I'm ready to keep going. Okay, so we've talked about entropy, this like tendency towards disorder, and how it's a key part of how we understand time. It explains why we have traces of the past, like you were saying, craters, fossils, memories.
Right. But makes you wonder, why was the past so special in terms of low entropy? Why wasn't the universe just a random jumble from the start?
Right, like why would everything start so organized and then just kind of fall apart?
Exactly. It's a good question. And maybe the answer is that the early universe wasn't actually special in some absolute sense. Maybe it's just our perspective, our way of looking at things that makes the past seem so ordered.
So you're saying the low entropy of the past might be relative, like special only to us.
Yeah, think of it like shuffling a deck of cards and seeing that the first 6 cards are all hearts.
Okay.
You might think, well, what are the chances? But any specific arrangement of those cards is just as unlikely. It's only because you've decided that hearts are meaningful that this particular order seems special.
So our perspective shapes how we see order and disorder. But how does that connect to our experience of time?
Well, think about our brains. They're incredibly complex systems shaped by evolution to predict the future based on what's happened before.
So we're always using memories to figure out what might happen next.
Right. And that, combined with our biology, creates this feeling of time flowing forward. It's like our brains are wired to see the world as a series of cause and effect relationships.
But as we discussed, physics suggests that reality might be much more complex than that linear model.
It probably is. But our perspective is limited by our brains and our evolution, and that creates this experience of time. We call it human time. It's how we make sense of the universe.
It's like we're only seeing a tiny bit of light in a huge dark forest. We can only grasp a fraction of the universe's complexity, and our experience of time comes from that limited view.
That's a great analogy, and it leads to another question. If our experience of time is so shaped by our brains and memories, what even makes us us? How do we have this sense of identity over time?
Right, we're not frozen in time, we're always evolving and changing.
Exactly. We're like those spin networks, always interacting and transforming. Our sense of self comes from our point of view, how we organize the world, and most importantly, our memories.
So we're basically stories made up of the traces of past events, always looking ahead to the future.
Exactly. And it's memory that allows us to experience the flow of time and feel like we're continuous selves.
Time, memory, and identity are also intertwined. We're creating our own narratives as we go through life.
And those stories are what give our lives meaning. They shape how we understand ourselves and where we fit in.
But what about all the different aspects of time we've talked about? Timeless reality at the quantum level, the flow of time, we feel the relativity of simultaneity. How does it all fit together?
It's tempting to look for one big theory of time that explains everything. But it might just be more complex than that.
So maybe there isn't one true time. Maybe there are layers of time, each with its own properties.
Exactly. The time we experience that uniform flow, that's what matters most to us. It shapes how we perceive things, our actions, our sense of self. But it's not the whole picture.
It makes me think of that letter Einstein wrote to his friend's family. He said, "For us believing physicists, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion."
It's a powerful thought, especially when you're dealing with loss and grief. Even while exploring the science of time, our experience of it is deeply emotional.
It's amazing how much our language struggles to capture the complexity of time. We talk about past, present, and future as if they're separate things, but it's all so much more fluid and connected.
Yeah, our grammar comes from our limited experience, and it can't really grasp the vastness of the universe.
So maybe we need to accept the mystery, admit that our language and understanding are limited.
And just appreciate the beauty and wonder of time in all its forms.
This has been an incredible journey. We've gone from debunking time illusions to seeing time as a perspective that comes from how we interact with the world.
We've covered so much. From mind-bending physics to the personal meaning of time.
And now for a final mind-blowing thought. So, if time is how we experience reality because of, our brains and memories, could there be other kinds of consciousness out there experiencing time in a totally different way? Like, what if aliens don't sense time like we do at all?
Now, that is a question that really pushes the limits of what we can even imagine. We're so used to our human way of perceiving time that it's hard to picture anything else.
Right. We just assume that time is this objective thing ticking away for everyone. But what if it's only one tiny way of experiencing something much, much bigger?
Even here on Earth, think about all the different kinds of life. Each species has its own way of sensing and interacting with the world.
So yeah, it's not crazy to think that somewhere out there, maybe on other planets or even in other dimensions, there could be beings with completely different experiences of time.
Exactly. Imagine beings who perceive time as cyclical or multidimensional or maybe even non-existent. Their reality could be so different from ours that we couldn't even begin to understand it.
It's kind of mind-blowing and a little scary, right? It makes you wonder how much we're limited by our own perception.
It really shows you the power of science. It lets us go beyond our everyday experiences and explore things that we once thought were impossible.
Today, we've gone from ancient philosophers thinking about change to modern physicists dealing with relativity and quantum mechanics. We've learned so much about time, but it feels like we've barely scratched the surface.
That's the beauty of it. The mystery of time is always there, inviting us to explore more and learn more.
So what does all this mean for us? Should we all go out and buy atomic clocks and start measuring time dilation?
Probably not. But I think the most important thing is to realize how precious time is. It's a limited resource, and how we choose to spend it shapes our lives.
And to remember that our experience of time is just that our experience, it's shaped by our biology, our memories, where we are in the universe.
And maybe there's an even deeper reality out there that goes beyond our human understanding of time.
It's an amazing thought to end on. This deep dive has been an incredible journey. We've gone from the ticking of our clocks to the edges of the universe, exploring time, reality, and even consciousness itself.
It's been great exploring this with you.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this adventure. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the nature of time. Keep thinking about this amazing mystery. Explore more, ask questions, and embrace all the possibilities out there.
Loved this video? Smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And don't forget to order the book. Link below.